sit in, they can't shift position. It helps protect a little bit better. So when I point to these vessels, I want to know the vessel. I don't care about the dent they sit in. Okay? So everything that's in parentheses, in the coronary sulc, in the anterior interventricular sulcus, I don't care about sulcus. Okay? So the parentheses things you can cross out. All right, I point to it, I want the vessel, not the dent the vessel is sitting in. So we see that with the right coronary artery, the circumflex artery, the left coronary artery, the anterior interventricular artery, in parentheses, whatever sulcus, nobody cares about sulcus. Picture B, spiral side, midway down. You do not care about the fossa ovalis. Again, we'll talk about that on practical 2, but right now, nobody cares. You do not have to know the pectinate muscles, so you can cross that guy out. You do not have to know the trabeculae carnae, which translates to meat lattice. Sounds like something you get at a fair. I'd like some trabeculae carnae, extra cheese. We don't care, so you can cross that guy out. On the free edge, where it has the aortic pulmonary valve, write the word semilunar. It should be aortic semilunar valve and pulmonary semilunar valve. I don't know why they left off the semilunar term. That would be like saying, this is John, human. I need John Smith, human. Okay, so
which one again?
Where it has aortic or pulmonary valve, put semilunar. So aortic semilunar valve, pulmonary semilunar valve. For full credit, it has to have the word semilunar in it. And there's nobody else to cross out.
I'm sorry, Miss Lemon, what was the very first thing that you said?
On A or B?
On A, you said
anterior cardiac vein.
Anterior.
Cross it out.
On what side?
Spiral side.
Anterior cardiac vein.
Right above the word right ventricle.
Found it.
Next page. Figure 30.2 is the back of the heart. So along the free edge, you can cross out the posterior vein of the left ventricle. Free from the bottom. Spiral side, well, there's really nobody to cross out. But just like we did in the front, I don't care about the word coronary sulcus or interventricular sulcus. So the parentheses you can cross out. Again, I don't care about the dent. I want the blood vessel. Figure 30.3. Now this is actually a very nice picture. It shows you a cut and a picture of all the valves at the same time. It shows you a close-up of the chordae tendineae, which are your heartstrings, so somebody can tug on them. It's fatal. And if your heartstrings break, you could die, so that's awkward. And then, of course, D shows you a nice cut through the heart muscle. Great pictures, but nobody really cares. Because when we dissect our heart, it's not going to look like this. We can't do a slice that looks like this. So nobody cares about figure 30.3. Figure 30.4 shows you these circulatory systems. So there are 3 separate circulatory systems. We have the pulmonary circuit that goes from the heart to the lungs. We have the systemic circuit that goes from the heart to the body. And we have the coronary circulation, which is figure 30.5. So, of course, the pulmonary circulation is how we drop off carbon dioxide and pick up oxygen. The systemic circulation is how we drop off oxygen at the tissues and pick up carbon dioxide to get rid of it. And then the coronary circulation is how the heart gets its own blood going to it. So the pulmonary circuit we care about for practical 1. The systemic circuit is practical 2. Okay? So the pulmonary circuit, instead of being in this chapter, they actually have it on page 475. Which is in the circulatory system chapter. So 475, figure 32.3 shows you the pulmonary circulation. So that's activity for pulmonary circulation. This is the same picture we have in your handouts. The difference is in your handouts, 1 is black and white, and 2, you label it. Okay? So if you want to see it in color, here it is in color. So we need to know the pulmonary circuit for this first practical. Okay? Most of the vessels of the pulmonary circuit obviously pop off of the heart, so we can point to it on the heart model. But after that point, it would be a word question. So activity for figure 32.13, pulmonary circulation. would be on this graph. Okay. Coronary circulation, again, is how the heart gets oxygen and how the heart gets nutrients. When the heart is pumping blood to the body or pumping blood to the lungs, it can't sample the blood that it's pumping. Now, the first couple of layers of the cellular material, the endocardium and a couple of layers of cells can, but the cardiac muscle is too thick for us to diffuse nutrients from the chambers as we pump the blood. So we have to have our own circulatory system to deliver. It's just like when you're cooking dinner, you don't eat dinner while you're cooking, right? You cook it, and then you feed yourself at the same time you feed everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Right.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes you stop, make sure you get the good stuff. If you burn something, you don't feed yourself. That's how the heart is. Even though the heart gets its own circulatory system to deliver nutrients, it gets the best stuff. It gets the most oxygenated blood, nutrient-rich blood out there. Because why give yourself crap if you can't? Right? You got to give yourself good sleep. So the heart has its own circulatory system to deliver nutrients and oxygen, take away waste and carbon dioxide. So the coronary circulation, figure A is the delivery, so the arteries, and figure B are the veins that take away. And of course, this picture of 30.5 also corresponds to table 30.1. This is the description, the definitions, and stuff that go along with that. So our blood enters into the coronary circulation, and it will almost immediately branch into the right and left coronary artery. The right coronary artery and left coronary artery have two branches. So the right is going to branch into the marginal artery. Your book says right marginal. The right on that one is optional. And you can usually think of margins are on the side. Okay, so it's going to go to the right side of your heart. The other one is the posterior interventricular artery. It's on the back of the it's on the back of the heart, and this artery goes right down between the ventricles, which is why it's called interventricular artery. You can remember the posterior comes from the right side because I'll be right back. The back vein comes from the right side of the arteries. Okay, so posterior interventricular artery. The left coronary artery is going to divide into the circumflex artery. So the left side makes a little C to go to the left side of the heart. And the anterior interventricular artery, which goes to the front. So the heart is kind of divided into 4 equal locations, like a cube would be. So left, right, forward, and backward. So you've got a branch going to the front of the heart, branch to the back of the heart, right of the heart, left of the heart. So we can deliver those nutrients. And these are those 4 major branches that if you need a bypass, this is who you bypass. So if you have a quadruple bypass, all 4 of those valves are blocked and your heart is not having a good day. If you just have one bypass surgery, it's just one of those vessels that block. The most common one is the posterior interventricular artery. That's your widowmaker. Right? That will usually give you a heart attack instantly because it kills the back of the ventricles and you can't pump properly. So those are those big boys that they look at. Now, sometimes you'll have other terms out there. The interventricular arteries are also sometimes called the descending artery. So you'll see posterior descending artery or anterior descending artery. So those are interchangeable, but the most often used term is interventricular because it's a little bit more descriptive of their location. Then we continue to divide and go to the myocardium, dropping off oxygen and nutrients, picking up carbon dioxide and waste, and we drain into the venous system. The middle cardiac vein is going to drain most of the back of the heart. The great cardiac vein is going to drain most of the front of the heart. The other ones we don't care about. So the anterior or the small, they're small, so we're going to ignore them. Both the middle cardiac vein in the back and the great cardiac vein in the front drain into the coronary sinus. And the coronary sinus is going to dump into the right atrium so we can enter back into circulation. So that's the delivery system for blood going to and from the heart. So you've got it in figure 30.5, table 30.1 on the board in a flow chart form. Okay, so we can point to these vessels on the heart model. I can ask you, where do I go next after this vessel, or all kinds of fun questions. Figure 30.6 shows you cardiac muscle. So the actual slide we don't care about because we already saw that in A&P1. So I'm going to assume you remember A&P1. And if not, just keep going with it. What we care about is that tiny picture. That's a nice kind of picture. That one actually shows you how the heart muscle is arranged. So in the atria, it forms a figure 8. So when it contracts, it squeezes straight down into the ventricles. In the ventricles, it's arranged in a spiral, so it squeezes up and out of the heart. So it's the arrangement of those cardiac muscle fibers that allow for the heart to pump properly and empty the atria directly down into the ventricles or empty the ventricles up and out of the heart. 30.7 shows you the sheath heart. So we're going to look at sheath heart. We'll do the sheath heart dissection tomorrow. Usually they're already pre-dissected, so we just plop them out on the tray and look at them and point to all the parts and play with them and put them back in their bucket and use them again later. Now, the big difference between the sheath heart and the human heart, on the sheath heart, they have not been dyed for color, so you can't tell vessels. So the only way to identify the superior vena cava versus the pulmonary trunk is to stick your finger in random holes to see where it pops out.
Oh my Lord.
I'm not going to do that on a practical. You can do it while we're looking at it. You're like, what's this? But I'm not going to have a practical where I'm like, see my finger poking through this? What is my finger poking through? It's weird. Okay. So on the sheath heart, you're not going to be responsible for vessels. Okay. So anything that says artery or vein, you can ignore because I'm not going to stick my finger in random holes and figure out where it pops out. You can during dissection, but for the practical, we're not doing that. Okay. So if it's a vessel, we're not going to point to it on the sheath heart. We will point to it on the heart model. One of the things to keep in mind in the heart model is the vessels are colored for content of oxygen versus the vessel name. So we always assume that red is arteries and blue is veins. And that is true in the systemic circuit because arteries have oxygen making them red and veins have carbon dioxide making them blue. And the pulmonary circuit is the opposite. In the pulmonary circuit, the arteries have carbon dioxide and the veins have oxygen. So the pulmonary circuit on the heart model, the arteries are blue and the veins are red. Where the systemic circuit on the heart model, the arteries are red and the veins are blue. So you can't just go blue vein because it depends if it's a systemic vessel or is it a pulmonary vessel, if it's going to be a vein or an artery. So color doesn't matter on the heart model. It just lets you know the oxygen content and the carbon dioxide content. So that's what most people get confused about. And so but it's red. How come it's a vein? Because it's full of oxygen coming back from the lungs. So that's one of those things. If you watch TV commercials, we've all seen TV commercials. There's that new one for Requesto or something where they have a little guy's heart and he's got a little Band-Aid on his little head and he's like, we're doing everything we can to not have a heart attack. Y'all seen that one? With a little cartoon heart that follows a little person around. If you pay attention to your cartoon heart, he's got one blue leg and one red leg. And that's to show his vessels. So kind of fun. If we look at the heart, this is not what the heart looks like in real life. But if we divide the heart into pores, atria are up here, ventricles are down here. This side of the heart is going to have carbon dioxide. This side of the heart is going to have oxygen. Okay? So if we were to look at blood flow from the heart, we would know blood in the right atria is coming from the systemic circuit, and it is going to be deoxygenated. Less oxygen, more carbon dioxide. We go through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. Still, part of this is coming from the systemic circuit. It's on its way to the pulmonary circuit. And because it's on its way to the pulmonary circuit, it's filled with carbon dioxide. Goes out through the pulmonary semilunar valve into the pulmonary trunk to the lungs. When it comes back to the left side of the heart, again, the left atria has oxygen, and it's going to go through the bicuspid valve or mitral valve. Again, bicuspid means two humps because cusp means hump. Tricuspid means three humps, so that valve has three humps to it. We sometimes use the word mitral valve. That's named after the Pope's hat that has a mitre hat that has the 2 points in the front and the back. Okay, so that's where mitre comes from. Or mitre corner, where 2 points of wood come together. So we go through that bicuspid valve into the left ventricle. That's then going to go out through the aortic semilunar valve to the systemic circuit. So all this has oxygenated blood. All this has deoxygenated blood. So when you look at that little cartoon, his one leg is blue and one leg is red to show oxygenated and deoxygenated coming to the liver. He's adorable. Okay. So you have that when looking at those heart structures. Now, when we do a cross section of the heart, which figure 30.8, the sheath heart picture we don't care about. What we care about is the little tiny heart towards the top corner. Now, you'll notice the left side is much thicker than the right side. Okay? So why do you think the left side has to be super thick and the right side doesn't have to be super thick?
The left side contracts more?
It has to contract harder.
Harder.
The right side's thinner because it's just going to the pulmonary circuit. And your pulmonary circuit is right here. It doesn't have to go very far. Now your systemic circuit, the left ventricle is pumping to the systemic circuit. It has to go against gravity to the top of your head, has to go all the way to your feet. So it has to go further. So it needs a bigger push. So it has to have a bigger muscle. So that's one of the things that helps us to identify left from right. So when you have the sheath heart, obviously when you pull it out of the bucket, you don't know what position that heart was in the sheath as it came out of the bucket. Right? So the easiest way to tell your left from your right on the heart is to open it up. The thick side ventricle, that's the left side, helps you to orient yourself on the left. And the thin side ventricle is the right ventricle, so it helps you to orient that way. So you can use that on the models, you can use it on the sheath, in real life, whatever. Left ventricle is always super thick compared to the right ventricle because of the oomph it has to have to go to the body, to the systemic circuit. Okay, so that little picture kind of shows that. And it is that big of a difference between the left and the right. It's majorly noticeable.
And that's because you contract the organs, you said, or what was it?
Yeah, the left has to go to the body. So top of the head, bottom, the feet, everywhere in between. So it has to be bigger to push further. Where the right side just has to go to the lungs. It has to travel 6 inches, so it doesn't have to be that big. So you have that guy.
Okay, so the systemic circuit flows upwards towards the head and the rest of the body?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the pulmonary circuit goes to the lungs.
Okay.
Pul always means lung. Exercise 31, the conduction system, ECGs, all that fun jazz. All this information would be word questions. So word questions on the quiz, word questions on the practical. So figure 31.1, we're on page 450. That shows you the intrinsic conduction system. The intrinsic conduction system is basically the wiring of your heart. So it's kind of like if your plug isn't working in your kitchen, there's a problem with that plug or the wire going from that plug to the breaker or the breaker box. Okay? So you can kind of figure out where your issue is. Same thing with the heart. If the atria aren't contracting, there's a problem with the SA node. If the ventricles aren't contracting, there's probably a problem with the Purkinje fibers or the atrioventricular bundle. So this wiring is going to transmit those voltage changes, that electrical current, through the heart. So we start with our SA node, which your SA node goes through the atria, left and right, pauses at the AV node. Again, the AV node is called atrioventricular because it's between the atria and the ventricles. And then we're going to go through the bundle of His, which is very short. I don't know why it's his and not hers. Don't ask me these questions. And then it's going to branch into the left and right AV bundle branches all the way down to the apex where it's going to do a U-turn and come up. Your book calls them the subendocardial conductive network. Most people just call them the Purkinje fibers. It's a funny word, but at least it's one instead of a whole sentence. So it does talk about those in the bold-faced words above that picture.
You say
so
Purkinje?
that is the conduction system. You'll have those electrical currents traveling through this conduction system to stimulate the atria and then stimulate the ventricles. So we'll have them contract after they're stimulated. Figure 31.2 shows you an EKG and the part of the EKG. And now most of us have probably realized most of the bumper stickers that show EKG with the heart and whatever hobby that person has are not biologically accurate. When you look at those little bumper stickers, it's like, that is adorable. You've got a problem with your atria. The lines aren't the same. I think the worst one is like, wow, that looks like defib that person's having right before that heart. But there's your parts, and those parts should correspond to something going on with the conduction system, and if everything goes right, that's going to translate to something going on with those muscles. Table 31.1 is almost the most pointless table on the earth. It just gives you the boundaries. So the PR goes from the P to, get this, the Q and R. Well, the ST goes from, guess what? The S to the T. Thank you, Captain Audius. So it just gives you the stop and start points for those components of the EKG. So a little bit of pointless. Okay. Now, table 31.2 gives you some examples of problems that we might see. So if I have a missing P wave, my atria may not be depolarizing properly. Okay? If I have an elevated ST, I'm having a heart attack, and my doctor should hurry the hell up and fix this problem before I die. So it gives you some of those clinical significances of those EKGs. Figure 31.3 shows you depolarization and repolarization of an EKG. So the yellow is showing you depolarization, so sodium is rushing in, and then our red part shows you repolarization, potassium rushing out. That should be followed and be occurring while we are having muscle contraction. And it gives you that matchup. During the QRS, I would expect that my atria are repolarizing while my AV bundle branches are depolarizing. So again, that could be wordy kind of questions. If my Purkinje fibers are repolarized, what part of the EKG would I be looking at? Well, I'd be looking at the TP segment, that kind of scenario. Now, 31.4 shows you how to attach the leads for an EKG. Of course, when you go into nursing school, they also do the chest one with all the little patches around your chest. Those are more accurate because they're on your chest. But we're just looking at the ones involving the limbs, so you don't have to take your shirt off in order to put them properly. So the typical lead is lead 2. And that's what we're seeing with our images of the EKG is what lead 2 looks like. So lead 2 is right arm, left leg. And we want that because it's the most accurate because it's the same angle that the heart sits. With the heart, the base faces the right shoulder, the apex points to the left hip. So you got this slight gangster tilt in that direction. So it doesn't sit up and down in your chest, it tilts. So by having the right arm, left leg, that's the same tilt, so the same plane, so it's the most accurate. Now, obviously, if you have Lieutenant Dan and your Lieutenant Dan don't have no legs, you can't do a lead 2 because you can't attach to the stump. That's a little rude, right? Right. No stump attachment. So if you don't have legs, you would have to use lead 1, right arm, left arm. Not as accurate, but still get some information. If your patient is missing their right arm, you can't do lead 2 or lead 1. You have to do lead 3, which is your left arm, left leg. Not as accurate, but still picks up information. Right leg is always your ground because when you work with electricity, you always have to have a grounding wire so you don't kill yourself, right? Mm-hmm. The answer is yes. Okay. So if you rewire your house and have to get a new ceiling fan or overhead light, there's always the wires you match. You match either the colors white to white, black to black, or the pattern, right? Stripe with the stripes and the non-stripes. Mm-hmm. You know. I am my own electrician. That's not why my hair is curly. I've never been electrocuted. Well, that's a lie. Not by changing. I ran into an electric fence once when I was a kid. Clotheslined myself on that thing. It was awkward. Like, get up. But anywho, you match your wires. No matter what kind of light fixture, there's always a ground that you touch to the metal part of the light fixture so you don't start a house fire. Same thing here. You always have a ground. Obviously, you're not going to set your patient on fire, but to work with electricity, you got to have a ground. So that's always the right leg, regardless of your needs. Okay? So that's that one. And the rest of the chapter is practicing doing an EKG. We're not going to do a real EKG because the one that we would have access to has to warm up before you use it, and you use it once, and then it has to warm up again. So you can do an EKG on a person and have to wait 30 minutes to do an EKG on another person. That's so boring. We do have obviously our handout stuff, right? And we got our big bonus. Everyone loves big bonuses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that should be a song. I like big bonuses and I cannot lie.
Oh my god.
I know. At least I didn't fully go into the song. Because my anaconda don't want none. Our big bonus. Again, fact one. With that right here. Okay. So heartless due tomorrow. Heartless, not heartless. There's a difference between the list and the list. And then of course we have the big bonus. He's big. So 8 fun-filled pages, but the good news is it's a point per page.
Nice.
Could be 8 pages of, so 8 points. So this guy you just labeled, pretty straightforward. Then we've got this one that everybody loves. I'm lying to you. Nobody loves this. So this one, it wants you to color the action potential, the depolarization, and the repolarization. So action potential, you will color yellow. The depolarization, you will color red. And the repolarization, you will color green. So if you use any color other than yellow, red, and green, my little currently purple pen will be very excited because it's going to write a whole bunch of nasty stuff on your paper because you follow instructions. I've had that. They're like, what? I wanted purple. But nobody cares you wanted purple. That's not an option. Red, green, yellow. Those are the options. If you don't have colors like that, shame on you. Go get some freaking colored pencils. Or highlighters, right? Standard colors of highlighters include yellow and green and red, or kind of pink color. Right? So what you do is you have your EKG. You have a missing P, so you would draw in the P wave, which means this guy right here, you're going to color what the heart is experiencing during the P wave. So figure 31.3 gives you depolarization and repolarization. So what they are coloring yellow on this picture, you would color red on your bonus. What they are coloring red on your picture, you would color green on your bonus. So you've already got all of the reds and all of the greens, what you would color in your lab book, you would put over here. Okay. The only difference is going to be the yellow, the action potential. Now action potential comes first, right? Action potential causes the depolarization and then the repolarization, right? Remember nervous tissue, got an action potential, then sodium rushes in, potassium rushes in, magic. So you have to put in the yellow. So how do you find the yellow? 1, textbook. 2, I am giving you permission to Google. I know, write this down. The only time I ever say to Google something. And that is because older editions of this lab book, so if you have the black version of this lab book, and maybe the one with the guy with the star on his chest doing the gymnastics horse thing. I don't know what it's called, but you do this and you swing your legs this way on the...
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, this is why I don't do sports. But anyway, if you have the older version of this textbook or lab book, it actually gives you the yellow. So the previous figure 31.3 looked very different than your current 31.3. If you don't have access to an old lab book, like the black one or the one with the star on his chest when he's doing the horsey thing, you can Google that. You would want to Google deflection waves of an EKG or action potentials of an EKG, because at some point somebody else scanned in your lab book and was, giving pictures away for free, because that's what people do in society, right? We call it sharing memes or just stealing pictures from copyrighted sources. I'm okay with that. Okay. So the yellow would be the action potential. Your action potential will always happen first. So if we have our picture in your book that shows depolarization, you would make sense? Kind of like if your kid always follows you around, if you see your kid, you're probably a couple of steps ahead of them. Okay, so action potential goes through the muscle, then depolarization, or it goes to the muscle, then repolarization goes to the muscle. Okay. So these 2 pages, this one, so P wave, you would color P wave stuff. This section, color that section. 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 Tricky. This is these two pictures, three pictures combined into one. If you don't pay attention, 9 times out of 10, people mess up this one because they finish it up with the last picture in your lab book, which is your TP section. We're not trying to do the TP, we're trying to do the P through the S. So don't just follow through. This is actually a combo of these 3 pictures. So that's how we're going to figure out how to color that. 2 of the 3 colors come from your lab book. The other one, there are other resources out there that will help them. Then we've got irregularities. So these are the 5 problems. So when it asks, what's going on in this picture? What is the name of this cardiac abnormality? These are your only options. I don't know why, but at least this semester, one person or more puts random crap, AFib. That's not on my list. Okay, these are your 5 ones. You have 5 pictures. Each one of these represents one of these conditions. Okay, so don't go off somewhere and going, I'm going to diagnose something even different. It's like, you're not going to get bonus points for stupidity. All right, so these are your 5 options. Sinus rhythm, nodal rhythm, heart block, premature ventricular contraction, and ventricle fibrillation. You can find images of all of these EKGs in your textbook. There's an entire section in your textbook that is devoted to abnormal EKGs. So that's how you would be able to find those guys. And then you would answer the questions. And again, the questions will vary. The ones that people usually get wrong are the reason. Don't give me a cause. Cause, reason, and effect are very different. So the reason for this abnormality, I get all kinds of reasons. And it's usually a cause that you're giving me. So when you look at this picture, can you see caffeine?
No.
Can you see drugs?
No.
Can you see a heart attack?
No.
No, because you're just looking at an EKG. So the reason for this cardiac abnormality cannot be drugs, cannot be lack of sleep, cannot be a heart attack, cannot be caffeine, because all I'm seeing is an EKG. And all I can do is answer questions based on this EKG. Caffeine might cause this, but it is not the reason.
So would it be like the depolarization of whatever you get?
Yeah. So it's like, what caused that person's death? A gun. No, the big hole in their chest that they're bleeding out of is what caused their death. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want what leads to this picture. I don't want what happens after this picture. I want this picture. So it's not caffeine. It's not a heart attack. It's not death. I can't see that in here unless you draw a little Grim Reaper. Okay? You got to, what is this picture showing me? What is the reason this is happening? So you're going to do that on each one. And of course, you're going to color yellow what's going on in the EKG. So which part of the conduction system is firing or not firing. Yep. That's why the picture's there.
Okay.
So, yellow. So you look at the EKG, you color the conduction system yellow, that matches what the EKG would look like. Okay. So if your EKG is missing the P wave, you wouldn't color one part of the heart because it's not getting P wave. So that means that part of the heart is.
Yeah, I record every class.
Oh, so you can't really see what she's pointing at on the screen.
Just because it's.
So that's why it's a big bonus. You gotta have like things.
I don't know. But.
I know, horrible thinking. Use your textbook. And of course, we will talk about each one of these briefly in lecture. You're just getting a preview now because we'll get to it most likely by next Wednesday. So we'll get there. You just get a little preview. Questions about this one? Now, when you print it out, I have no earthly idea why, but sometimes it'll print like these 3 on one page, and then that on a different page, and then that on a different page. The format's weird. You still just matchy-matchy. That one to that one, that one to that one. Even if it prints. I don't know why it does that. That is an issue with a program, and I don't know how to do the program. Questions about this bad boy?
Can you go over the areas to color one more time on page 3?
Yeah.
That top one.
So the yellow you're gonna have to find from a resource.
Yeah.
That's your action potential. And that, it tells you in the instructions. The depolarization will be red. So in your lab book, what is colored yellow in your lab book, you would color red. Repolarization will be green. What is colored red in your lab book will be colored green. So basically, you're shifting the color over. So figure 31.3 can give you the depolarization, repolarization, the red and the green. You just, yellow in your book is red, red in your book is green. Yellow you'll have to get from a different source to actually choose.
Say that again. Yellow you have to get from what?
A different source. That's the action potential.
Okay. So, okay. Depolarization red, repolar green, action yellow.
Any other questions? On Thursday, big heart bonus Thursday.
And you said the heart list is due tomorrow? Okay.
Any other questions? Alright. Look at Daddy's Victor. Did y'all miss Victor? That was really fast. Hell no. I don't like Victor. Sorry, I'm still talking about Victor. So the only thing really to do with the anatomage this go around is the heart. You obviously have blood vessels. That'll be next time, but we have the heart. Oh, look, it's the heart. So going into it again, you have the aortic arch. You have the brachiocephalic artery, the left common carotid artery, the left subclavian artery. You can see the superior vena cava coming in and the inferior vena cava coming in. This is your descending thoracic aorta, and directly behind the heart would be the descending the descending thoracic aorta is going to be behind the heart. Below the belt, where the diaphragm is, would be the descending abdominal aorta. Here we have our heart. Of course, we've got the apex, the pointy end, the wide end is the base. This is going to be the auricle of the right atria. You can't really see it well, but it peaks. That's going to be the auricle of the left atria. This is what it looks like in the body. It's going to be covered in fat. Fat protects. Okay, so that helps protect the vessels and the heart from hits and so forth. Oh, love the cross section. This was frustrating. So again, which side is left? Which side is right?
The bigger section is the is the left.
This is our left ventricle, very, very thick. This is our right ventricle. It looks thicker because it's actually on a turn. So you're seeing the thickness of the tissue and then the surface. Okay, so left ventricle, right ventricle, apex. You're able to see the right atrium right here, emptying into the right ventricle. The left atrium is right here. You kind of slice right through it. You can see the bicuspid or mitral valve from the left atrium to the left ventricle. You can see the remnants of the tricuspid valve here from the right atria to the right ventricle. Now, both of your AV valves, so the right or left or the tricuspid, bicuspid, those valves are held in place by the chordate tenonate, our heartstrings, and that's what pulls them closed. So they'll close those valves so you can pump blood out of the heart instead of backwashing into the atria, because backwash is bad, right?
Right.
Yes, backwash is always bad. Doesn't matter if it's in your cup after your kids or in your heart. That'll cause problems. Okay. Now, those chordate tenonate are attached to our papillary muscles. So they're called papillary muscles because they're like a papillae, a little ball that they're attached to. Now, in between the ventricles, again, we have the interventricular septum. This is the back of the heart. I'm lying, it's the front of the heart. I took the heart out so you can just see the valves. A little freaky dinky there. So again, going from the right atria to the right ventricle, you're going to have this lovely little guy here, your tricuspid valve. So it does have 3 humps, 1, 2, 3. From the left atria to the left ventricle, you're going to have the bicuspid valve. From the right ventricle to the pulmonary trunk, you're gonna have the pulmonary semilunar valve, there he is. And then from the left ventricle to the aortic arch, you're gonna have the aortic semilunar valve. So, making the heart disappear was the easiest way to show the valves. And of course, you can see all the big vessels coming in the aortic arch, the brachiocephalic artery, the left common carotid artery, the left subclavian artery, superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, the descending thoracic aorta, the descending abdominal aorta. This bad boy in the back, from the pulmonary trunk, you would go to the pulmonary arteries, which is this bad boy here. And that goes to the lungs, to the lobar arteries, drop off carbon dioxide, pick up oxygen, lobar veins, and then you would have the left and right pulmonary veins that would go into the left atrium. Ooh, hard.
So we do have to know the lobar? The one, okay.
Any questions about the big throat part? So you got the rest of today. Our models again, there's heart on a stick. Most of our A&P models are on a stick. Sounds like therapy. They're all over there. I like the hearts that are all the same size. Okay, so there's an abnormally large one. I don't like that. I like the normal. So from here, the one that's front, the two on top that are front, they're all going to be matches. Okay? If it's too little, too big, you can ignore it.
Hopefully, I got all
Any
that.
questions? So tomorrow's lab, we